45 years ago, there was only one electronic computer in the world. It worked at such a speed that soon confident estimates were made that few of these computers would ever be needed. 6 for the United States, 3 for Britain, oh, and possibly an extra one for Scotland, and 1 for the colonial administration in India. Today, there are millions of computers, and they are used for so many kinds of things that it is tempting to think that the main act of the computer revolution is over. But this view might be even more mistaken. Millions of computers all over the world are being joined together in networks. As the machines talk to each other, they're transforming the ways in which people interact and challenging the social institutions which have served us well for centuries.
For hundreds of years, we've recorded and communicated our thoughts as marks on paper and stored them in places like this. The British Library holds around 18 million books. Hundreds of miles of bookshelves hold nearly the sum total of all human knowledge. It's outgrowing its space and has to move to new premises. But today, there is an alternative. Our ideas and thoughts can be stored as patterns of digital electronic pulses, which can be processed by computers. The contents of 450 or so books can be stored digitally on a single compact disc. In principle, all the words, pictures, sounds in the British Library could be stored on a few dozen rows of shelves. But there are other advantages. With books, despite the best efforts of librarians, only things which have been anticipated and indexed can be found. When information is stored digitally, you can find anything in an instant. A title, a subject, even a small phrase. Take the words "to be" or "not to be." The computer can, in just a few seconds, find that phrase in the midst of 450 books, revealing that it occurs not only in Hamlet, but in 6 other works, many of them preceding Shakespeare. The computer can do this because it's taken the rich world we experience through our senses and reduced it to its most elemental form. Patterns of digital pulses which are really just a lot of zeros and ones.
The world of the computer is digital. That is ones and zeros. And they're beautiful because they're perfect. They're always ones or zeros. There's nothing in between. The world around us is analog. It has all different values. It has when you look at me, you see all different colors and all different shades, and it's not ones and zeros. And so to take this world that we live in and put it in the computer, we have to change it into a digital world that the computer can understand and can store and process. So we take a picture and break it up into a series of dots, or what we call pixels.
With a black and white picture, black can be 1, white 0. Other more complex ways are used to encode colour. Once in this digital form, information is permanent, immune to the ravages of time.
Once you've digitized a picture, you have a permanent record of that picture that can't age. Like if you took a photograph, that would age over time and it would change its colors. Whereas when you change it to ones and zeros, you have a perfect memory of it. For example, when they clean Michelangelo Sistine Chapel painting, they're not sure whether they're really putting it back like it was back in Michelangelo's time. If they digitize it then, they'd have a permanent record and they know exactly what those colors had to be today.
But the most revolutionary benefit of digitized information is that it can be sent down a wire at the speed of light to anywhere, even your own living room.
By the 21st century, the art galleries, the libraries, the universities and museums of the world could be open for anyone with a telephone.
While this vision of a digital home is not available yet, more modest services are available in some countries. For a few dollars a month, without leaving their living rooms, Americans can shop for almost anything. Check a movie review. Or learn about exotic places. They can plan their next holiday or book their next business trip. And, of course, find out what the weather is like. Nearly 2 million Americans use such services, although it's been slower to catch on here. What the computer has to offer varies from person to person. For Dave Hughes, it's a gateway to an electronic frontier. To connect himself to the world, all Dave needs is his computer and a device called a modem, which plugs into the telephone network.
And so you have to dial, of course, the word. Now it's starting to dial. It'll go through lots of switches, and if it's not busy, we'll hear it. You get very used to learning the sounds of phones around the world. It's ringing correctly. Here it comes. Now these two high-speed modems are interconnecting. And now I am in Tokyo, connected with my ID on a system. And so I go into eSpace. Now, of course, there's about 6,000 Japanese on here, and about maybe 500 of them handle English well enough to come into the English section. So we're now in the English section. And there's some things to read here.
After reading his mail on the computer in Japan, Dave can hop to a different computer in another country with just the push of a few buttons.
We are connected to Tallinn, Estonia right now.
One of the things that's happening is this disappearance of place as an attribute. What someone has said, the passing of remoteness. You know, you're no longer remote. When I'm sitting in my basement at home before my terminal, I'm connected. I'm plugged into the world. The great thing about it, it's computer-mediated form of communication, in that I don't have to know who I'm sending the message to. I can send a message out there to someone who saw that movie last night, whoever you may be. And the computer network will find that person and give it back to me.
Okay, now let's see if I can get through to Saltrod, Norway, to a one-line bulletin board overlooking the...
Physically, Dave hasn't left his chair, but his electronic presence has travelled half the globe in less than 10 minutes. This ability to receive and communicate digital information at great distances has led to new forms of social and business interaction.
Billions of dollars, pounds and yen pass back and forth each day between the world's financial centres. But no actual cash changes hands, only electronic pulses.
Volume is fairly low. It's 5,000 shares. The stock is now up to 850, up 19.
Okay, I want to get a price, please, in bats on the opening.
Home Depot is a quarter half, 5,000, 15,000.
25,000. Right, cancel the balance.
This dealer is in London.
Okay.
You get that, Rich?
Well,
This one's in Boston.
It's a little bit of a move. Yeah, okay.
What do you want to do?
Although they're over 3,000 miles apart, linked by computer networks, they're part of a global financial community, separated by space, but united by communication.
It's amazing to me, having been doing this throughout the 80s and back into the 70s, that I can be sitting here and say the same thing. I am seeing exactly the same thing as someone in Paris, exactly the same thing as someone in London. There is no difference. I think that's amazing. I think that is absolutely amazing.
On the quota, what, you bid me 3/4
The market used to drown in paper. Now, with computers logging the deals, they handle as much in a day as they used to in a week.
3.85.
Now buyers and sellers can communicate directly through wires. Their needs are changing. Do they have any need for middlemen? Do they even need a marketplace? One day, the floor of the New York Stock Exchange may look like this. This is the floor of the London Stock Exchange. Once as bustling as Wall Street, today it is a horse-drawn carriage, abandoned in the face of a new electronic age. In 1986, the exchange set up an electronic trading system to modernize the market. To their great surprise, within a week, the floor was empty. Dealers realized that they no longer needed a central marketplace. They found they could deal faster and more effectively from the computers in their offices. In the digital age, they found a physical stock exchange unnecessary.
I was very surprised at the speed with which they left the floor. Indeed, it was somewhat embarrassing to us because we'd spent quite a lot of money on kitting out the trading floor with screens in the expectation that the old culture would prevail and people would wish to stay in physical contact one with the other.
Also, if the market has their short-term...
Computers which send, receive and process information are changing the way other people interact.
Hi there.
Computers are creating new social gatherings that are not geographic. The old town commons was just for those town people. But now we're creating comparable groups of people throughout the world, but they're united not by geography, but by some common interest. In the world of technology and science, we have many of these discussion groups around particularly scientific and engineering disciplines. And we gather around this little electronic fire and trade wisdom. It's beautiful.
Exchange of knowledge has been the cornerstone of scientific discovery and progress. For centuries, the primary means of testing and communicating new ideas has been to subject them to a rigorous review by the editors of scientific journals. Magazines such as Science and Nature have become the arbiters of new claims and discoveries. Today, scientists have an alternative. Hundreds of thousands of scientists in dozens of different countries are connected up via a worldwide computer network, Internet. It has the potential to change science, as a recent episode made clear.
We've established a sustained nuclear fusion reaction by means which are considered...
In March 1989, Sidney Pons and Martin Fleischmann made a startling announcement. They claimed they had discovered a new phenomenon called cold fusion, a potentially unlimited source of cheap and pollution-free energy. Scientists around the world started scrambling for more information. Apart from newspaper reports, there was little hard information. It would be weeks before academic papers came out. So scientists quickly turned to the network, convening a worldwide 24-hour-a-day conference of interested scientists from many countries. Information from different labs whizzed back and forth as digital pulses.
All you fusion skeptics, could you shut up for a while? I think it's pretty clear that there is cold fusion going on.
I have as much right to be skeptical and to talk about it as you have to believe.
You're right, you can have a big...
False leads were quickly abandoned, promising results pursued with new vengeance. Something which, in a conventional journal, would have taken months to resolve, progressed very quickly. Unfortunately, in this case, into oblivion.
You're right, you can have a big laugh at the rest of us in a month or two.
The computer age has already come to scientists and to financial traders. But all of our lives are touched by the new digital world.
I think we're innocently leaving information about ourselves in our daily lives in everything we do. When we go to the shop, when we go down to the video store and take out a video, go to the library, make a telephone call. That information can be captured, it can be put together, it can create a profile about ourselves that, if used wrongly, would have serious implications for ourselves.
Nearly every person in this country has an electronic presence, a compilation of the electronic traces we leave behind. Whatever you think of computers, the society you're a member of depends on them. In the USA, they've gone further down this road and recognise that there are risks in such a social experiment.
One of the great ironies in this is that we're supposed to be the freest country on the planet. And I think we are. But because of our technological sophistication in the field of information technology, we are probably the most dossiered people on the planet. Even in totalitarian states, they don't have the data wealth that exists here in the United States. You and I are counted and recorded and questioned and dossiered and filed, probably more than any people on Earth.
When an American withdraws money from a bank, her name goes to 2 computers. 4 more computers here when she gets a driving license. She uses a credit card. Her name is sent to up to 7 different computers. The information on her paycheck is sent to 3 different databases. Even if she's just sitting at home doing nothing, her name will pass through up to 50 different computers in a day. It all adds up to an incredibly detailed picture, an electronic alter ego, one over which she has little or no control.
One of the consequences of having computer networks is that you can actually allow information to get polluted and for the pollution to spread around, too. You can get wrong information in there. There's always wrong information in a database. It's almost impossible to prevent. And now you can get that wrong information transmitted around and shared, replicated, and acted upon.
Before they electrocuted Mrs. Mabel Neville, she said these words for all to hear. Never let
Foreman Brown, a former Hollywood songwriter, is alive and well at 90. 5 years ago, he was dead, or at least his electronic alter ego was.
Here I was, 85 years old and semi-retired and living pretty contentedly, and suddenly these checks appeared. Department of Water and Power, and the mark deceased across my signature. And that was rather startling, And, of course, naturally, I went to the bank immediately to see what was going on, and that started all the ruckus.
Brown left, assured by the bank that the matter would be resolved. But his troubles had just begun. Somehow, the rumors of his death were being greatly exaggerated, spreading to the computers of the Social Security Administration, which stopped issuing his monthly checks.
Well, I went down and explained, here I am, I'm alive, and you've cut off my Social Security because you say I'm dead. And the lady was really rather rude, I thought. She was not about to look up anything. She said we couldn't make such a mistake.
Hard as he tried, Brown couldn't keep up with the rumors as they quickly spread from database to database. Everywhere he went, the data had got there first.
I was going to rent a film, and I offered my American Express card, and the girl looked up, as they generally do, to get the numbers okay. Then she came and promptly tore the card in two and threw it in the wastebasket. And it was embarrassing because there were other people there. She said, your credit rating's no good.
The final straw was when they stopped his Medicare payments. More than a year later, all the records were finally straightened out. The memory of the experience still lingers with Brown.
To provide a proper setting for her spode.
It just seems so little you can do about it. Everything is in somebody else's hands, and you have to rely on their goodwill to fix things, and eventually it works out, I guess.
She would have to get a more distinguished mate. Oh, yes, she would have to get a more distinguished mate.
Foreman Brown's ordeal is not an isolated case. Thousands of lives are disrupted every year by faulty data spread through databases.
Trying to catch up with a piece of information, correct an error in the system, it's like running after a greased pig. Even if you get your hands on it, you're not going to hold it. If there's an error in your credit file, and that information has been given to 3 insurance companies, a medical information bureau, 5 credit grantors, and 6 employers, you're never going to be able to catch up with it.
It isn't just false information that can be damaging. Our electronic presence reveals many things about us which we might not want others to know. Normally, we decide what information we share with people. There is the most personal information we only share with our intimate friends.
That's great. I'm starved.
There are the things we talk about with our family and acquaintances.
Hey, how was the picnic?
It was fun. I'm glad I went, actually. I'm going to Chicago on the 10th, evening of the 10th, and I'll be going to the Human Origins.
There are matters we discuss with business colleagues.
And the Johanssons there.
Now, what time do you get into Berkeley?
I think we get into Berkeley.
And there are even things we're willing to tell to strangers.
Thanks a lot.
But there are few such choices in the digital world. Total strangers can scrutinize the electronic traces of our lives, the restaurants we eat at, the hotels we stay at, and the goods we buy.
It isn't a case of, if you're innocent, why are you worried about what people will find out about you? It's a matter of self-knowledge, dignity, and the decision that each person should make which of his or her inner thoughts and feelings should remain private, subject to change and consideration, and which, in a sense, shall be a public snapshot that'll be recorded someplace, which will then establish you in the eyes of someone else in ways that are very narrow, shallow, and possibly false.
So you would like to receive the product still. So the total package would be $29.90 for the bench buster.
All this data gathering has provided work for millions of Americans who make a living typing data into computers. Ironically, these information workers may be monitored more closely than anyone. For the work they do leaves a record, which means that some hidden overseer can monitor exactly what they type, how fast they type it, and when they stop for a break.
Probably no group in the workforce is more closely monitored or has less privacy than the folks who deal with information. Because every aspect of what they do, by the very nature of the technology, is recorded. Those people really live in a prison. They live in an informational prison. It's in the nature of what they do. Now, I can see and have believed for some time that employee privacy is one of the great workplace issues of the 21st century.
It's already become an issue, with angry workers filing complaints. One such disgruntled employee is Harriet Topitzis, who's been monitored for years by her employer, TWA. This electronic timesheet details a TWA phone agent's typical workday. It shows how many calls she's answered, how long each call took, how much time she paused between calls, and how long her breaks were, down to the second. Such workers may be reprimanded for talking to a customer for too long or taking too much time on a break.
This is an electronic sweatshop where you have the sophistication of the computer and management demanding that you work harder and faster continuously.
That round-trip airfare would be only $377.
It's not a way that the human body can work. You break down, just like a machine breaks down, and that's the whole point here. They're trying to make robots of us.
Not for the first time, a new technology has come into conflict with a social system.
Computer technology is changing at such an enormous rate. I mean, the technology is being overthrown about every 3 or 4 years. And social systems move much more slowly. So you get the computers moving like that and the social system just sort of creeping along. So there's always going to be a difference between the two.
The greatest fear I have, is that we become so comfortable with the technology, that we get so many benefits from the technology, that we are anesthetized by the technology. It may well be that we are just going to sleep, that we're just not caring or understanding enough to take that step back and say, wait, this is great stuff. These are wonderful machines. But let's keep it on the plus side. Let's make sure that we understand what the deleterious side effects are. Let's control the technology. Don't let the technology control us.
5/8 for 500.
As the world's financial traders have discovered, controlling a new technology is no easy task.
6 now earned, 335. That's 78. That's 82. I leave 1,800 shares.
Empty orders.
Connected by computer networks, dealers all over the world anxiously await the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange. In the frenzy that follows, millions of dollars are made or lost at the push of a button.
25, 30,000 from Richie.
I saw you
Make it
30,000.
$1.70,
Solid,
40,000, 50,000. A half 5/8, 2,000,
Donna, what are you giving me?
5,000. 1 second, my bid, my offer.
Sell 10,000 Glaxo, 30 3/4.
31.4, Rich, 31.4.
64 1/4 plate for 12,500 ICI.
35 points on the upside. That's just the beginning.
It's a half to go orders depot, 1,000 more trades of 5/8. A half to go orders, 2,000, 10,000, HD.
The stock market has always been a hectic place. Today, with computers and computer networks, the market moves so fast that traders can barely keep up. Sometimes they can't.
There's been chaos and near panic in the world's major stock markets today. Stockbrokers' screens in London flashed red as more than £50 billion was wiped off the value of shares, the worst day in the stock market's history. And in New York tonight, the selling is still going on. It's full-scale panic, dealers are saying.
They're calling it the Monday Massacre, the worst drop in Wall Street history. Hour after hour today, wave after wave of selling hit the stock market. A selling panic, the professionals call it. By the closing bell, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was in the steepest fall in its 103-year history, down more than 500 points. Computers kicked off some selling programs. Also, those
many experts believe that computerized trading, so-called program trading, was partly to blame for this disaster. In program trading, special computer programs spot trends and incite traders to move huge quantities of stocks faster than humanly possible. These trades, in turn, may be detected by other trading programs, triggering them to buy or sell. Very quickly, an avalanche effect can build up with wild swings of the market. Since the crash, new procedures have been imposed to intervene and, in effect, slow down computerized trading.
A century ago, it was weeks before you found out that there was a war going on across the sea. It took that long for the information to get over. And that told us something about the pace of events. Today, this is getting squeezed down to microseconds. Literally, something happens in Australia, and an investor in New York knows about it and takes action just like that. We're getting so right now that we worry about the speed of light being a constraint on us. It takes 30 milliseconds to get a piece of information across the country. And we're worried, does this really make a difference that you're not going to find out about something until light gets there? That's how far we've gone with the information flow today. And the question is, are our social systems stable when you turn the gain up and collapse this information flow? And we don't know.
These are some of the anxieties which are beginning to cloud the dream of a computer-aided world. This place may well be the first to find out whether the dream is turning into a nightmare. It has started one of the largest social engineering experiments, involving the most complete use of networked computing. This experiment is not in Japan, the USA, or Western Europe, but in Singapore. 10 years ago, few Singaporeans knew how to use a computer, let alone a computer network. At that time, the Singapore economy was built around heavy industry, steel and chemicals. Today, they've staked their future on information technology, IT. The involvement with IT is all part of the government's ambitions to speed up development, to turn Singapore into a global business and communications centre, managing not only manufacturing, but information as well.
Our vision is to evolve Singapore into an information society. In fact, I should say, the vision of the country is to become a developed country by the end of the decade, where we will have meaningful and vibrant economic activities, with cultural activities, with high standard of living. And this vision that we have is providing a lot of excitement to various organizations.
IT matters to us because we are working a very small and tight ship. We don't have millions of people to dispose of. We have relatively few digits, and every person must be performing to his maximum, which means that he must be supported by technology, by information, by networking.
All over the island, work is done electronically through computer networks, be it business, medicine or law. But this is only the start. In this room, and others like it, an electronic alter ego is being developed for the entire island. In the past, information on Singapore only existed on land deeds or old maps, which were hard to find and harder to use. Now, Singapore is being digitized. Everything you want to know about Singapore is being gathered in a massive electronic database called the Land Data Hub. Everything about any particular building, how the power lines are connected, which phone lines it uses, which businesses are inside, and who owns them. A social engineer's dream, this electronic alter ego is a dynamic record of the entire island of Singapore. It's not just the buildings. Many activities of the people are organised with electronic efficiency, and in the process, a record of those activities is produced.
Well, we know practically everything about the travelling pattern of a passenger. We know where he buys his ticket, when he buys his ticket. We know where he enters the station, what time he enters the station, what kind of ticket he uses, where he gets out of the station, which station he gets out at what time. So practically everything we wanted to know.
With the help of computers, the travelling habits of Singaporeans can attract the attention of government officials. And with computers linked by networks, the government maintains extensive dossiers on every Singapore citizen. The world is watching this extraordinary experiment in social engineering. How will the government balance the benefits of efficiency and prosperity with the loss of privacy?
We've gone further than most other countries in the region in making use of information technology for a number of reasons. Firstly, we are small. So when we need to make a move, it's easy to get the whole country to be moving and pushing in that direction. Secondly, it's the way we are put together. We operate a system based on meritocracy and efficiency, and on getting things done as sensibly and with as little fuss as possible and as quickly as possible. We do quite a number of things which Western governments probably would hesitate to do, either because ideologically they feel they should not intrude on personal lives, or sometimes because they just don't have the time to do it because the next election is too close around the corner. But it is a different society, and we have to govern the way the population needs to be governed and the way the population accepts being governed.
In Singapore, the government has seen that information is power. What are the implications for those who live in ordinary Western democracies?
It's extremely dangerous to take a relaxed view and to say to ourselves, we live in a democracy. We can leave it to government, to the legislature, to look after our interests. I think the major risk is government monitoring of the individual. I think there are dangers there, particularly with those governments that are promoting the development of identity cards for its population, particularly when those identity cards carry with it an obligation to disclose it whenever you want a service within society, to be housed, to go into hospital, to open a bank account, to obtain employment. These are real risks.
After Singapore, the next most networked country in the world is France. That wasn't always the case.
Allô, allô? Allô? Rappelez. Oh.
10 years ago, the French decided to modernize their antiquated phone system. At the same time, they installed a national computer network, Minitel, which people could tap into from home. In 1983, the only service on the network was an electronic phone directory. Today, there are more than 12,000 services.
Les conseils essentiels, c'est ça, TVHA.
Rendez-vous sur votre Minitel 3614 TVHA.
Minitel is everywhere, in homes, record stores. It's even at transport cafes. A French long-distance lorry driver can search a Minitel database to pick up a load for the return leg of his journey. Minitel has become an integral part of French society, just as the government hoped it would. but it never expected that Minitel would be used against it. In 1986, students around the country held a series of protests against a change in university admission policy. They hit on the idea of using a free propaganda machine, Minitel.
On a décidé de se servir du Minitel parce que, comme le mouvement était dans toute la France, on voulait avoir un moyen de communication rapide entre les délégués de la grève, entre les universités, mais aussi un moyen d'expression directe pour le public.
Using the network, David Assouline and other leaders of the movement were able to take their cause directly to the public, an instant publishing operation. They also used the network to organize the various student groups around the country.
Philippe, what happened yesterday at the protest?
David, 1,000 people came, about twice as many as last week. The police were a bit rough, but no one was seriously hurt.
Christine, what is happening in Marseille?
The newspapers did a story on us yesterday. It was mostly sympathetic. We're planning a demonstration for next week.
With such efficient coordination, the leaders built the movement into a massive rebellion in less than 2 weeks. In Paris alone, more than 1 million people marched through the streets. 4 days later, the government backed down and cancelled its plans for reforms. Before the students' triumph, few protesters had thought about using computer networks. Now almost all large French protest movements, from labour strikes to political rallies, are organised by networking.
In just 45 years, the descendants of this machine have permeated every aspect of our lives. Be it politics, business, science. From Singapore to Paris, from Wall Street to the City of London, the future is digital. Whatever you feel about computers, there's no going back to a world without them. We now depend on computers every bit as much as we depend on the planes we fly in, the roads we drive on, and the bridges that we cross. All these things support our complex ways of life. The problem is that bridges are made of steel and mortar. Build it strong and it'll stay up. But the computer's foundation is less tangible. Computers depend ultimately on software. Modern programs contain hundreds of thousands, even millions of lines of code written by human beings. This group are involved in writing just such a program. One tiny error by any one of the group can bring a whole program crashing down.
The program that we're all working on now is 500,000 lines long, and there's no room for error. Because there is no reality behind it, you're just typing it. The complexity can be machines that like no human has ever seen before. I believe that these things are, like the project I'm working on now, is far more complex than a 747 is.
A jumbo jet has 6 million parts which have to be put together correctly. But it's a physical thing, subject to physical laws, and this enables engineers to solve problems when they arise. If a crack appears in a wing, the engineers don't have to inspect all 6 million parts. It's most improbable that the crack has anything to do with the colour of the carpet. After 20 years of extensive testing, it's very unlikely that a 747 will fail catastrophically. Software is different. It's not physical, it's logical. If a program crashes, the cause may be almost anywhere in the 500,000 lines. And no matter how much testing is done, there will always be circumstances, logical possibilities, which nobody considered. Take the case of the Therac radiation machine, a machine for treating cancers. The computer program which controls the machine had been thoroughly tested. The machine itself had operated safely thousands of times. But when Katie Yarborough underwent Therac radiation treatment for a cancerous tumour, she was sure something was wrong.
She said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "You've burned me." And they said, "Oh, no, that's not possible. This is the most sophisticated piece of equipment on the market. And it's not possible for you to be burned." And a week later, I was totally paralyzed on the left side.
Less than a year later, at another cancer centre, a Therac machine malfunctioned again. Ray Cox was being treated for a tumour on his back. 6 months later, Ray Cox died. In fact, the Therac radiation machine had a software bug in it. When the operator made a mistake in setting doses and corrected it in a particular way, the machine ignored the change and emitted a powerful blast of radiation. Instead of a normal dose of 200 rads, Katie Yarborough received 20,000. Since the installation of new software and extra safeguards, the Therac 25 has been free of problems, but not before people had died, victims of bad software.
Faulty software in one machine is frightening, but when connected to a computer network, the effects can be devastating.
It's curious about computer networks today. I think that they're very robust in one sense and fragile or vulnerable in another sense. You can go out and physically damage networks, drop bombs on them, cut lines, and they still work. And yet they're vulnerable to little information damages. They're vulnerable to mistakes in computer programs that run them. Imagine a program that has 2 million lines of code that are the instructions that run it. It's guaranteed that they're not all right, that there have to be mistakes in that. It's beyond human possibility to make that entirely right. They're just waiting to happen.
And on January the 15th, 1990, happen it did.
About 2:25 yesterday, Eastern Time, a software problem occurred in the network. Preliminary indications are that the trouble was in the signaling system spread rapidly throughout the network.
The AT&T telephone system, which had run for 30 years without a major hitch, was crashing. Technicians watched in horror as line after line began to fail. For customers, it was a day of frustration.
All circuits are busy now. Please try your call later.
Nearly 20 million phone calls couldn't get through. Companies which depend on the telephone system, like travel agencies, suffered millions of dollars in lost business. After 18 hours of frantic searching, engineers traced the problem to one single line of bad software among the millions that control the network's computers.
A small mistake in one of these millions of lines of computer code that governs the network was suddenly called into play. And one switch told another switch, do this and do that, and they were wrong things. And the next switch communicated it to another. And the network started talking to itself and babbling back and forth, and pretty soon it stopped working. The problem with software is you can never test it completely. I mean, you'd like to think that you've written this program and now you can test it to see if it works. But the problem is that there's so many possibilities for conditions, for the inputs to this program. There's so many what-ifs. What if this? What if that? And you put a lot of what-ifs together, and you get just a myriad of possibilities. And so many, you could never test all the situations.
The collapse of the phone system has led some people to wonder what else is at risk. For every day, we trust our lives to software. Take flying. Each day, over 1 million passengers cross America by air. The planes which carry them are flown with software governing everything from navigation to cabin pressure. And they are guided through the air by traffic controllers who depend upon computers to feed them crucial data about a plane's position, speed, and altitude. On October the 14th, 1989, at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, something strange happened. Information on the air traffic control screens began to disappear. The controllers knew that they had to act fast. Lives were at stake.
This is not a job where you can say, hold on a second while we get the thing operating again. The aircraft are still flying. They're still in our environment. They're doing 250 knots. And an aircraft can travel quite a distance over in a minute doing 250 knots.
With planes circling overhead and no working computers, controllers were forced to rely on their memory and the only tools they had left, pencil and paper.
It seems unbelievable we resort to pencil and paper, but those are real people in those aircraft, and you have to resort to whatever means that'll help you remember that that aircraft's there and at what altitude he's at.
The problem was caused in part by a poorly designed computer program coupled with an overload of traffic at the Dallas airport. It was fixed, but similar software-related problems have occurred at other world airports, including the one controlling the area around Heathrow.
So there is a remarkable irony. The story of the computer began 150 years ago because one man, Charles Babbage, was worried about the errors which human beings, called computers, made when calculating mathematical and navigational tables. Errors could cause ships to get lost and run aground. Babbage dreamed of building a computing machine that would free the world from such errors. There is a story that Babbage once said he would be prepared to give up the rest of his life if he could return for just 3 days in the future to see how technology had progressed. Babbage would surely be impressed by what has become of his great idea, but disappointed to find that while computers don't often make mistakes, the people who program them do.